right, hi everyone. My name is Sapna and I'm one of your UGTAs this semester. I'm going to be creating a tutorial on JUnit testing. So to start off with some background, later in the course we're going to be talking about the test-driven development approach where software developers focus on unit testing every piece of code they develop. And so unit testing is testing of a small logic or a code to verify that the output of the code is as expected on the input of a specific data or on satisfying certain conditions. So usually the unit tests are supposed to be independent of the other tests, and unit tests are targeted at only one unit of code, meaning the test could be for an individual method or class. So next I'll go over the unit testing framework. This will make a lot more sense once we actually try and implement a JUnit test. So to start off, in order to verify if the code is logically working as expected, a test case with a specific checkpoint or verification criterion is created. And then when that test case is executed, either the criteria passes or it fails. A log is generated as per the test case workflow, and the framework will report a summarized result on the past test cases and failed ones. Per the severity of the failure, the test case may not proceed further and may stop subsequent execution. And there could be certain low severe failures that get reported in the log. However, it doesn't show a hard stop but continues without blocking the further test steps. So just as an example, if you have taken CSE 110 or 205, or if you've ever submitted anything using Gradescope, they have test cases that are used to test the methods that you wrote. And so this is essentially the same or a similar thing. You're gonna be the one writing those test cases to make sure that all of the individual units or methods in your code work correctly. So JUnit is an open source framework that is used for writing and executing unit tests in the Java programming language. And the first step for all of you is going to be to download, install, and configure JUnit in Eclipse. I'm not going to be showing you how to do this step just because there's a lot of very useful tutorials online, and I'll be giving a couple of links to those step-by-step tutorials that should help you to get everything installed and configured in Eclipse correctly. But if you do run into any issues, or if you don't like those kinds of tutorials, please reach out to me and I can help you out, or you can come to my office hours and I can help you then. And yeah, we can go from there. So we can talk about assertions now. So JUnit testing methods utilize assertions, which are statements that check whether a given condition is true or false. If the condition is false, the test method fails, and if all conditions in the test method are true, then the test method passes. So some of these assertion statements are assert true, assert false, equals, null, not null, same, not same, and then fail. So starting off with assert true, it causes this test method to fail if the given Boolean test is not true. And then assert false causes the test method to fail if the given Boolean test is not false. So with true, it is expecting the value that is returned by the method being tested to be true, and false expects false. And then assert equals causes the test method to fail if the given two values are not equal to each other. So it wants them to be equal, and it will fail if it's not. And then the first of the two values in this top assert equals statement here is the expected value, and then the second is going to be the value that is actually returned by the method that's being tested in the different class. So the first of the two values is considered to be the result that you expect. The second is the actual result produced by the class under test. And then not equals is just the opposite. So the method will fail if the two values are equal to each other. So you want the values not to be equal to each other. That's the only way this test will pass. Otherwise, if they are equal, then it's going to fail. So basically the opposite of assert equals is what assert not equals is. And then assert null, the test method will causes the test method to fail if the given value is not null. So assert null is essentially like it wants the value, it wants null. And then assert not null will fail if the given value is null. And then assert same and not same are essentially, they're the same as equals and not equals, just the only difference is that it uses the double equals operator rather than the equals method to compare them. And then fail causes this test method to fail. So this will all make a lot more sense, like I said earlier, once I can show you how to use them. So I'm just going to open up Eclipse here. I have an empty workspace, and I'm going to create a Java project. Okay. Next, and then finish. Okay. And then in here, I'm gonna make a class. I'm gonna just call it random methods. Public class, everything fine. Okay. So once you have JUnit configured in Eclipse, when you go to add a new class, you should see the option to add a JUnit test case. And so, yeah, okay. So the name of that will be random methods test, and then the class under the test is going to be what you just created, or what I just created, called random methods. And I'm just going to get in random methods and then finish, and then add JUnit 5 library to build that. Sure. Okay. Okay, so now we can go ahead and create some methods to test in the test class, or to test from methods in the test class. So let's start off by creating some super simple methods that we can easily test. So we're going to start off with assert true and assert false. So assert true, the test method will fail if the value is not, or if the given Boolean test is not true, and then assert false causes the test method to fail if the given Boolean test is not false. So let's create a method that can return both true and false from different conditions. So we can do okay, so I'm just creating a method called days and week, which returns a Boolean value, either true or false, and it takes in an integer value. So when we call, or when we test this method from the test class, we're going to send in a value to this method that will go through, and either that will cause the method to return true or false. So I'm just gonna put in this. Okay, so we set Boolean result equal to false. So this variable result, we initially set it to false because we wanna test if this will actually return true. So if the number is equal to 7, so we can expect that the result will be true, and then the value returned will be true. And so then that will cause the test method, if we were to use assert true, to pass. Okay, yeah. So days in a week, there's 7 days in a week. So hopefully this is a very simple, straightforward method. Hopefully it makes sense. Now we can go and write the test for it. But before we can do that, we need to just import one more thing. So I'm going to import before each. And before each, essentially what that does is it's used to signal that like the method that it comes right before is executed before each test method in the current class. So I'm gonna use before each when I create an object of the random methods class. And we'll just do okay. And in there we can create, first let's do this private. We'll call it test. Okay. So then test equal to new. Okay, so this is just creating an object of the random methods class, and like I said, this before each is used to signal that this annotated method should be executed before each test method in the current class, so that we can access the methods from random methods, essentially. So now let's create a test for the days in the week method that we just created. Okay, and in there we can just do like, we're going to do the assert true statement because we want the value returned from there to be true. So we're just going to put in assert true test a dot days in week 7. So this 7 is what we're going to pass into this method that we wrote here. So once 7 goes in here, it first result is set to false, and then 7 goes in here. So num that we got in here equals 7. So then result is changed to true, and then we return result. And so that value is true. So once we run this test should pass. And yeah, so let's try that. So we're going to run as a JUnit test and make sure to save everything. And then once it goes through, okay, so it's passed. So there's 0 errors and 0 failures, and it ran 1 out of the 1 test that is there. So now if we were to change this value to 8, once we put 8 into this method here, it's gonna fail. It's gonna return false. So now we can expect when we run this test it's gonna fail. It's gonna fail because it's not returning that method that it's not the method that we're testing days and week right here. This is the method that we wrote in the random methods class. We pass an 8, it's going to return false. However, this statement is expecting that it would return true. So it fails. So we change this back to 7. And so now we can do a similar test, but let's do it with assert false. So now we can do, let's call this f assert test a.days in week, and then we have, let's put an 8. So now when that method runs with the value 8, it's going to return false, but this test will pass because that's what it's expecting, is the value false. So let's run it. And then, yeah, so it passes. So it passes 2 out of 2 tests, 0 errors, 0 failures. And so now if we were to change this to 7, this test would now fail because it's expecting false, but it would get true. All right, let's write another method to test or to use the assert equals statement. So I'll actually just pause the recording and write the method really quickly. Okay, so now I wrote this method called int public int how many A's. So it's essentially going to get in a string, and it's going to count the number of A's in that string and then return the count of how many A's there were in that string. So I have a variable called count. I set that to 0, and then I take the string that I got and I turn it into a character array so that I can count how many A's are in there. And then each time it comes across an A, it will increment. So you could do count equals count plus 1 or count plus plus, whatever, and then return the count. So now when we write the test for that, we can just like write the test for this. So we're going to be using assert equals and assert not equals. And so we'll call this test. And then we'll do all this. Assert equals. So the first value in the assert equals statement is going to be the expected value, and then the next value is going to be what is actually returned by the method that we're testing. So let's say I'm going to just set this as 1 for now, and I'm going to do test a dot how many A's, and I'm going to send in apples and oranges. Okay. Oops. And so in here, there's 1, 2, 3 A's. So we expect the value to be returned from this method, from the how many A's method, to be 3. So if we put in apples and oranges, it's going to go through here, separate all the, put it all into a character array. So go through each character, count how many A's there are, and we should end up with the value 3. And so that's what we're expecting here. So our expected value is 3, and we're sending in apples and oranges. And let's see if that works. So now, okay, yeah, so it passes 3 out of the 3 tests. Let's say we put this in as 4, and then we ran it again. Now it would fail because this only has 3 A's. So, okay. Now let's do assert not equals. So now we want the expected value and the value that's returned by this to not equal each other. So these two in assert equals, these two equal each other, but in assert not equals, we want them not to equal each other. Okay. So I'll just go in and add a not here. And then let's say we change this to okay, so assert not equals will fail if the two values are equal to each other. So this would fail in this as the same here. So since these two values are equal to each other, this test would fail on the first try. Let's see if that's true. Yeah, but we want them not to be equal. So if I were to change this to 8, the test would pass because they don't equal each other. So I'll do one more example of that one. So not equals, let's do let's do a word that doesn't have any A's in it. Okay, the word muffin. Let's test and see if that works. So this test should pass again because there's obviously not 8 A's in muffin. But to make this test fail, if we were to do like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 A's at the end of that and then run it, the test would fail because now it does have 8 A's. So this and this cannot be equal if you want this test to pass, and this must be equal for this test to pass. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go over assert same and not same just because, like I said, it's like basically the same, and you probably, I don't think that you'll be using those just because assert equals is a lot more common, but yeah. Okay, let's write this last method for null and not null. So we can just create one last method here. Okay, I'm coming up with this one kind of off the top of my head just to like get a good example. So we're gonna make a method called get fruit, and it's gonna take in a string value, or it's gonna take in a string, and we're gonna do a hash map maybe, yeah. String Sorry if I'm typing a little bit slow. I'm not using my own computer, so not really used to the keyboard that I'm using right now. So I will try to type as fast as I can. Okay. So we just need to make sure we have the correct things imported to get that to work. And then we'll do color. Do Okay, so this like hash map, you could call it fruit map or color map. I hope that doesn't confuse anybody. I think I might just change that. But yeah, so it's just going to essentially just do what a hash map does. It has these two things associated with each other, and then now when we go over there and make a test, we can send in, let's say, like apple, and for null, that would not work. If you were to do assert null and send in the value apple, the test would fail because that wouldn't be null because apple is there. So let's put in a couple other ones just to clarify that a little bit. Okay, let's do banana. Do grape. Do okay, and then we can just return the fruit map. Okay, so method called getFruit takes in a string and then hash map and then put apple red. Yeah, okay, so it's like this is like a super simple method, very straightforward, kind of like hard to explain honestly, but so it just puts these into the map and then returns them. Okay, so now we can go to the test and create a test. The test will also be very short and easy. So we can just steal this again. Control-C. Okay, test, and then we'll do, let's call it test fruit. And then we're gonna get rid of these. So first, just to make this a little like easier, okay, so I'm just gonna create string fruit, and that way I can just get the banana and okay. And then, so now we're gonna do assert null. So we want to expect the value. Okay, so my bad. We're not going to do banana here. Let's do, so assert null is essentially it wants null. So it wants the value null to be returned by the method that we're testing. So one thing that's not in that map is orange. And so if we do assert null and then put in the fruit orange in there, and then we run this test, this should pass because orange is not in that map and it would return null. So yeah, and then the same for not null, we want the value to actually be in the map and not return null. So when we pass in banana, it won't return null, and it will pass this test. So for here, if we wanted to do assert null and we wanted the test to fail, then we could do one that is in there, so banana, and then run it, and then, so now it would fail. Yeah. So I hope that made sense to everyone, and if you do have any questions or if the tutorial wasn't clear enough, please let me know and I can do my best to help you out or maybe create another tutorial. That is all I have for today. I'll post this code alongside the video so that you can test it out if you want to. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have.